It's very easy to just live in an autopilot way where you're not aware of the different ways that you could be, which is true in every moment. And the more that we realize that, the more volitional we become. Welcome to Prometheus Yoga. My name is Alina, and today I wanted to do a little check-in about what I have learned and how I have changed since starting to meditate every day. So a little bit of background about me and my history with meditation. So I started practicing yoga when I was 16 years old. So I've kind of been exposed to these kinds of ideas for a really long time. But in college, I started to kind of get more interested in the kind of history and philosophy of yoga and Buddhism. And I took some classes when I was at Yale studying these different topics, and even spent a summer abroad in Nepal where I studied Buddhism in a monastery for a couple of months. I had some kind of Western professors teaching us about the history and philosophy of Buddhism, and then also Tibetan monks who were being translated, kind of teaching us the teachings of Buddhism in this more traditional way. That was my first real kind of teaching on meditation. So that was when I was 20, and we ended that course with a 10-day silent meditation retreat. So I did that successfully, made it through when I was 20 years old. And then I sort of continued my yoga practice on and off. I wasn't super consistent, but it was always kind of a part of my life, especially more so when I was going through difficult moments. But it was after I moved to Philadelphia that I sort of really got interested in yoga nidra. So this was in 2022, the very beginning of the year. 3 years ago, I started to be really curious about lucid dreaming. In college, I had learned about monks who could continue to meditate through dreaming. So it was like you would try to maintain a state of meditation throughout your waking life, and then follow yourself through unconsciousness, like observe yourself falling asleep, and then immediately begin lucid dreaming in the state of meditation. And I thought that was so interesting. So I've always kind of been curious about these like unconscious realms in relation to yoga and meditation. And so I was listening to a podcast about healing trauma, and there was this man who was a monk who was talking about research that he had done. He was like had lived a monastic life and then became a researcher into these different techniques. And he said that he was aware of kind of like how to work with dream symbols in a lucid state to process trauma. And I thought that was so cool. So I got into looking at him and what some of the stuff he was trained in and like what his practices were. And I saw that he offered yoga nidra guidance, and that was something that he studied. And so I thought, what's yoga nidra? And then I started looking into it. I found Ally Boothroyd on YouTube, love her, took her course, got certified as a yoga nidra meditation teacher in 2023. So I started that program in 2022. It took me like almost 2 years to get through it. But throughout those 2 years, I had started to do a yoga nidra practice regularly, like not every day. There were points, like there were a few months where I was probably practicing yoga nidra every day, but at least like a few times a week, like probably 4 times a week. I found that to be incredibly transformational. And I still do practice yoga nidra since I became certified as a yoga asana teacher in 2024, like a year ago. I haven't really been doing as much yoga nidra because now so much of what the demand is for yoga asana. So that's mostly what I kind of am focusing on now. So I still will practice yoga nidra once or twice a week probably, but it's not as religious as it once was a few years ago. And then once I got back from my yoga asana teacher training, I studied in India with Gianna of Gianna Yoga, and she is just so fabulous, and I highly recommend you get your ass kicked by her in a yoga class sometime. So I was really attracted to her for how incredibly advanced her practice was. I'm also a circus artist and really into kind of like contortion style flexibility, and she was just so advanced in these ways and also so incredibly deeply steeped in the actual actual textual tradition and like knowing the philosophy, knowing the history, it is really complicated to understand yoga currently and historically. It's complicated and there's a lot of kind of conflicting stories around it. So I just found so much value in her teachings for showing me kind of how to make sense of it all and what is really yoga. And I really wanted a teacher who understood what yoga actually is, like not the Western modern adaptation, not like core power yoga, but like what is actually yoga and how to honor and be authentic to that practice as, you know, its own unique tradition. So it was after I finished training with her that I started doing my daily pranayama and meditation practice. And, you know, I have not been 100%. There've been times when I'm more or less 100%, but pretty much like guaranteed at least 5 days a week for the past year. Like oftentimes every day, like usually every day, but now I teach a class at 7 a.m. on Wednesdays and Fridays, and I have to wake up at 5. And so my morning ritual of practicing daily meditation, breath work, journaling, and scripting while I drink my coffee and eat breakfast. So that takes an hour. So I don't have time on Wednesdays and Fridays to do that now. So I usually will do yoga nidra instead, at least on one of those days. So I still end up practicing meditation like 6 out of 7 days. At least 5 of them are seated and then 1 of them yoga nidra. That's pretty much the standard right now for me. Although in the past, like I said, it had been 7 days a week of seated meditation. So anyway, I'm not perfect, but this is what I have experienced so far. So I thought it would be cool to kind of differentiate the transformations that I've experienced from the yoga nidra regular practice into the seated meditation practice, because I do feel like they have done different things for me and both have been very important. Yoga nidra is a practice of relaxation and learning how to rest and relax on purpose. And for me, as somebody with a real passion for the physical body and expressing myself physically, who has a hard time slowing down and taking breaks, who really kind of identifies with this athletic nature in me, it has been hard for me to really honor my body when it needs rest, because I just have so much excitement and enthusiasm for doing fun, cool things with my body. And also it was a big part of my identity to be a circus person and all of this. And, you know, I think as a woman, so much of our value is based on our physicality and how we look. So I, for a multitude of reasons, would struggle with relaxation and giving myself time to heal. And so when I started the yoga nidra practice, I was 2 years into a really bad shoulder injury, something like that just would not recover. And as an aerialist, I love hanging from my hands and using my shoulders and doing handstands. And this is a great source of joy for me. So it was extremely painful and devastating to have to pause all of my practices for all of that time. And I would keep pushing through and then I would keep hurting myself. And I also had a wrist injury and an ankle injury. And, you know, I've torn my ACL and meniscus 3 times and I was like running and aggravating inflammation in my knees. I've had the whole gambit of injuries. So I was really interested in yoga nidra as a way to amplify my healing, because, you know, the healing happens mostly in like the deepest stages of sleep. That's when your body's actually really regenerating the most. And in yoga nidra, you can kind of put yourself into those really deep states of sleep, slow brainwave states more often. This can amplify and accelerate your healing, which is what I was really interested in. But it did require rest, and it taught me so much about how to be slower and respect and align with the healing ability that my body always has and trust in that. So that was really huge for me getting out of this cycle of perpetual overuse, injuries, and just really taught me how to relate more healthfully to my body. In addition, with Ally, you really get into this subconscious mind work and kind of like how to identify the unconscious patterns that you're creating with yourself in your life through your beliefs and kind of making those beliefs conscious. And so part of what I uncovered was that one of my unconscious limiting beliefs was around being broken, because I've had so many injuries since I was 11-year-old. That's when I tore my ACL meniscus twice. And then the third time I was 20. And I broke my ankle through my cartilage shriveling up, not because I actually did something, but it was like my cartilage dried up and my bones started rubbing together until they cracked when I was like 10 years old. So I just have had injuries for so long since I was so young. So I kind of had this belief that I was broken, and maybe for some other reasons that we don't have to get into. But through yoga nidra, I kind of realized that the etymology of the word to heal is actually to become whole. So the affirmation that is the antidote to that belief for me was, I am whole and I am healing and I can heal and I'm always healing and my natural state is of one towards healing. I know this to be true, but I just was not conscious that there was this deep narrative inside of me that was counter to that. So that's been really game changing. But then the other piece of it too was that I realized that I had a narrative of not being supported. And it wasn't even like, I think a lot of times we can have these stories like, oh, I'm not supported. Maybe no one cares about me. No one's taking care of me, or I'm all alone or something like that. But for me anyway, I discovered that there were ways that support was available around me and I was refusing it. And I wasn't conscious of the fact that it wasn't that support doesn't exist for me. It's that I wasn't accepting support. I needed to just allow the support that was already available to support me. And these are both ongoing practices, It's like identifying is one big thing. And I definitely have made huge progress in giving myself the antidote, kind of reconciling this dissonance inside of me. There's always more work to do. It's a continual unfolding, and there's more and more that I uncover that might be unconscious narratives and beliefs holding me back. So that was super powerful with my yoga nidra work with Ally, and I think a lot of my life really shifted. There were some major patterns that kind of broke, and like my relationship really transformed and I became much healthier there. And I also ultimately was able to decide to switch out of the career that I had been in, that I was feeling done with, and was able to get clarity on what it was that I actually do want to embody, and gave me the strength to be able to say yes to that, which was ultimately going to India and doing my yoga teacher training and now being a full-time yoga teacher. So then after that teacher training, when I went to India with Gianna for the yoga asana training, we would do breath work and meditation every day. And it was recommended that this be a daily practice. It was really actually one of my teachers there, who his name is Guinea, and I can link to the retreat center there if you want to study with him too. You can go to India. He's an excellent meditation teacher and comes from a lineage of yogis. So the training was in this small town, Vashisht. And you may or may not know that Shiva is known as Adi Yogi, or the first yogi. Shiva is the original yogi, and he had 7 disciples, I believe it was 7, who he trained in this art of yoga, and one of them was named Vashisht, and that is the namesake of the town where I was doing my training. And there is a hot spring there in honor of this ancient sage Vashisht. This is in the Himalayas, and my teacher Guinea, his uncle was a yogi, and there were generations of yogis going back in this small Himalayan mountain town. So his teacher told him, if you do these practices every day, you'll never be sick again. And I was quite impressed by that and thought it was worth a try. So I got the sequence from him, which involves these 7 breathwork techniques and then meditation afterwards. So that's what I started doing every day. And that's what I've been doing for the past year. And I do have that practice that I'll link here if you want to try those 7 breathwork exercises every day, if you want to test this claim that you will never get sick again. So far, pretty good. Again, I'm not 100%, so that makes it hard for me to say for sure that it does or doesn't work. I did just get over a cold, but the day that I got sick was a day that I skipped breath work. And I had been thinking, am I going to get sick? But I just had kept staving it off. But then the one day that I finally skipped my breath work, I did actually get sick. So anyway, I think it's worth a shot. Give it a try. It's up there. And so what has happened? What has happened since I've been meditating every day? How have I changed? I think the number one thing is that I am much more patient, able to sit in stillness, in the discomfort, in the urgency. I think that's a big thing. Practicing sitting in the urgency. Oftentimes in the morning when I wake up, I feel like there's 10,000 things I need to do. I need to start doing all this stuff. I have all these ideas. And instead to just sit in silent stillness and just watch those urgent thoughts and feelings float around in my mind and then try to choose to be with my own internal light instead of the demands of the external world. That's made me really patient, or really patient is a stretch, compared to how I used to be. Much more patient. It's much easier for me to sit and wait. Although, of course, I do definitely still get impatient sometimes because my natural pace is like very fast. Also an astrologer with an Aries moon. So if you're into astrology, then maybe that'll make sense to you. I like to keep things moving. And also, maybe you could tell from my athletic nature, being such a physical person, like I'm moving and shaking. So it can be hard for me to sit still. And this was part of the gift of yoga nidra. And then also even more so, I think, with the seated meditation. And I think seated meditation is more difficult than yoga nidra for me. It's literally less comfortable, like sitting instead of in a cozy yoga nidra nest with all of your pillows and your cozy bed laying down nearly asleep. So seated meditation is more uncomfortable, and especially first thing in the morning when my brain is racing, it's harder to still your thoughts when you're seated upright. It's easier to relax out of urgency when you're laying down. So I think it's like a level up in a way. I think it's more difficult for me, maybe generally, I don't know, because you kind of have to fight your nature more. Like I said, it's easier for your thoughts to be racing in the morning than it is when you're laying down in the middle of the day at a time you're already kind of sleepy, So the discomfort that you have to tolerate is much greater. In yoga nidra, you're not tolerating discomfort. You want to make yourself as comfortable as possible. And that is a valuable practice. It was especially for me, somebody who pushes too hard. But, other people might need the medicine more of practicing being in the discomfort. I will put myself in the discomfort to the point where I hurt myself and go kind of overboard in that direction. But I think there's other people who might tend to put themselves in really easy, comfortable situations and have a harder time challenging themselves. So there's always a balance, and different people need different things. But I mean, discipline is always going to be good for everyone too. And so is relaxation. We all need both of these things. But anyway, the seated meditation I've just found to be a stricter teacher, And a lot of times I do just let my thoughts wander. Like I will even let it be sometimes a meditation on the things I need to do during the day. A lot of times my mind will go towards all the things that I need to do. That's the main kind of thing that I tend to think about. And so it's hard for me to sit still because I'm like, oh, here's all these things I could and should be doing. Sometimes I do just let that play out and just kind of am like, oh yeah, that would be a good idea. Sometimes I come up with good ideas for like how to do things or something, And I think that that's valuable in and of itself, just to sit and reflect about your day before you experience it. It's kind of like adding a little bit of foresight and planning and strategy potentially. Not necessarily, I'm not trying to like force that, but that just happens sometimes. I will also meditate on the chakras, and I'll meditate on the planets, and I'll try to focus on a symbol, or sometimes I'll focus on my breath, or sometimes I will visualize light coming in through the crown of my head, or try to connect to the inner light inside of me and see if I can really sense that. But those are that's a little bit harder. I would not say that I'm a very advanced meditator. And oftentimes it does just end up being kind of allowing my thoughts to play out and just like, ugh. But it depends on the time of day I wake up to. Sometimes if I'm waking up really early to do it, then I will already be kind of in this in-between realm where I just am still kind of like dreamy and spacey. And that's kind of cool to see how loose my thoughts become like that. And even just, becoming aware of your thoughts and practicing noticing your thoughts, like that's the value of meditation, right? It's building that self-reflective muscle and noticing your mental habits. So that way you have more power and autonomy to change them, because I don't think that volition is just something that everybody has. I don't think we all just can do whatever we want and have total free will and agency. I think that's something that you have to learn and cultivate and develop through discipline and awareness. And it's possible to not have awareness. And if you don't have awareness, then you don't have free will, because you'll just end up being in reaction mode. Awareness is essentially space. If you have no space between what is happening and you, then you can't manipulate that or do anything with that, You have to have a little bit of separation to be able to get the perspective to even notice that there are other possibilities. It's very easy to just live in an autopilot way where you're not aware of the different ways that you could be, which is true in every moment. And the more that we realize that, the more volitional we become. So overall, I would say this regular meditation practice of yoga nidra and seated meditation has definitely allowed me to grow my awareness substantially. I also learn faster. I've learned so much. I've started a business. I have to do 1,000 things and, just like rewriting the stories of myself. But also I think yoga nidra and meditation are literally scientifically shown to improve neuroplasticity, which is your ability to learn and grow essentially, and how fast you can learn. So I definitely feel that. I think when I was younger, school, I think kind of like robbed me of my own curiosity. I became so obsessed with just kind of winning at school and getting the grades and doing things right and excelling, which I did. I went to Yale and I was obsessed with that because I wanted to be able to afford college because my parents weren't going to be able to pay for me to go to college. So I was like, oh, if I go to an Ivy League, I learned you could get a free ride. And so I was like, okay, because I asked my mom, like, can I go to an Ivy League? And she was like, if you can afford it. And I was like, oh, okay. So I have to be able to pay for it. And that's how I figured it out. And that's why I became so driven to just succeed in school so that I could get out of the home environment that I really didn't want to be in anymore. So I think I had gotten more kind of focused on what people validated to be worthy of interest and knowledge, and kind of lost my own connection to my personal curiosity. But through these practices and learning about myself and introspection, I have actually found my own curiosity again. I understand and feel confident in and connected to what I think is genuinely interesting, and can spend hours in a rabbit hole of yoga and stretching, which is kind of an internal learning, or astrology or psychology and these things. So it's been a long and winding path, but I think meditation has helped me to find my curiosity again and the mental strength to actually learn all the things that I care about and I think are interesting, because, learning is work. But if you find what is genuinely of interest to you, then it becomes effortless and fun. And I think that is kind of the key to life. So many people talk about just trying to make the most money, or what can you do to be successful. But I think for me, I realized that what I want for my life is one where I enjoy my hours of life, where I am spending my time in the ways that I want to be spending it, because you can never get your time back. You can get your money back, but you can never get your time back. So, and to be able to have the energy to sustain life in that way, you have to be connected to what's really real for you and what's really interesting for you. And you have to know yourself really deeply. And if you don't have an interest in knowing yourself deeply, then you'll never figure out what those things are that would actually keep you alive in a way that feels irresistible. And that's how I want my life to feel. Effortless because of the joy that it is to be in my passions. And I think I'm on my way there. There's a lot to navigate with the material world too, and fitting into the reality of America and everything. But I think I'm rambling now. That's all that I'll say about that. I highly recommend it. It's free. Sit still, just a couple minutes. Notice your thoughts. Notice your breath. Feel your body. Ground in the physical sensations, and maybe even explore the internal landscape. Notice the visions behind your eyes. Notice the sense of who you are, just for a minute. Set a timer for a minute and just see how it feels. And if you decide to commit to it in a daily way, or, close to it, I don't know, maybe something like me, 5 days a week, I promise you will feel a difference. It's not a quick fix, but it's a deep one that lasts and pays dividends for the rest of your life. So let me know if you're on a meditation journey, if that's something that you're interested in or working on or already doing. I would love to hear how it's going for you. Feel free to leave a comment there. If you want to try a yoga practice or meditation with me, I have a bunch of meditations and yoga practices on my channel here. You might subscribe if you like that sort of thing, or just want to support what I've got going on. And I also have longer full-length practices on my website, and I do offer personalized yoga nidra recordings if you are wanting to kind of really accelerate and speak directly to what your specific subconscious needs to hear. I can do personalized recordings as well as kind of like one-on-one private yoga lessons online if you're suffering from any kind of injury and want some help on your mobility or recovery journey. So if there's something you think I could help you with, feel free to reach out to me. All my links are in the description below. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.